What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. So this is officially the first video of actually doing work on the Datsun. Well, I guess it's the second video of actually being on the Datsun, but that doesn't really count, so who's really paying attention to that anyway? So today, I don't really know where to start with this thing. I've got a long list of stuff, so I think I'm just going to pull the engine out, engine and trans, and start stripping the engine bay. All right, so the first thing that we're going to do to get this thing out of here, I got to get the hood out, so we're going to do that really quick, and then drain the fluids out of the engine, so we got the coolant, and then engine oil out of here. That way I don't get it everywhere, and I'll probably try to drain the transmission fluid too, because we're going to pull this as one combo. That way I don't get transmission fluid all over my garage as soon as I pull that thing out, because the yoke will come out from the drive shaft, and then all the fluid can come out. So as soon as it gets to that like 45-degree angle that you need to actually get this thing out of the engine bay, just dumps everywhere. So got to do that, and then we'll start undoing all the stuff. But this engine is super simple to actually remove, because obviously there's not that much going in here, not very many electrical connections or anything like that. Just a few heater hoses, things of that nature. But everything else should be pretty easy to knock out, and try to get this out pretty quickly. I just need you to take these bolts out. So there's 4.
Okay.
This one, and then those 2. I'm gonna hold the hood.
Good. Yeah, hold it.
I'm holding it.
Don't crush my head.
Can you open the door? Radiator's out. Engine oil is drained, and I got it all over the place because my oil pan got clogged, and I caught most of the coolant, which was good. Now we got to disconnect everything, so we're going to do electrical connections first. I'll probably just wait until we're ready to pull the trans to drain it all the way. That way I can just pull the yoke out of the drive shaft, or the drive shaft yoke out of the trans, and then drain the fluid that way. And yeah, we just got a bunch of little things like fuel lines we got to take care of. Got to make sure we connect or disconnect everything, which there isn't that much on this engine because it's super simple. But we still got to make sure we get it all done. And especially the linkage is another thing that I have forgotten in the past, and it's easy to break this stuff. So don't want to ruin like the throttle linkage on this thing. I do have a spare because I have a whole extra L24 right there. And I've got pretty much an entire Datsun sitting in all these boxes up here. Everything's disconnected on the passenger side currently, so we got the battery out, ground's disconnected, starter's disconnected, all the wires going to that. The heater hoses going into the cabin are disconnected, and then we have the alternator disconnected as well. And fuel, that was the last thing coming from over here, which probably should disconnect this one, and then it'll be fully disconnected. So this is the return line. Actually, I think this is just a vacuum line going in the cabin. That'll be the last thing to disconnect. Should just pull right off. All right, now the passenger side is completely done. So now I'm gonna move over here, figure out what we need to disconnect on this side. Mostly just linkage. I don't think there's any really electrical components on this side. We'll have to disconnect it from the coil, and I don't know. We'll look around, make sure we don't forget anything. Driver's side is pretty much taken care of. We got the throttle linkage disconnected from the carbs, and then we also have the choke cables disconnected. Got all the wiring disconnected from the coil, going to the distributor, and I think that is it on this side. Now I'm going to go underneath and disconnect the trans. So we got this is the speedometer cable, and then I think there's one wire coming off of it for the backup lights as well. And we have the slave cylinder line coming from the clutch master. So that's down there. So we got to get that as well. I don't want to forget that. And then we can probably start strapping this thing up and trying to pull it out. All right, I disconnected the slave cylinder and the all the other stuff that was going in the transmission, so the speedometer came and whatnot. And I ended up just cutting the exhaust. As you can see, it's just hanging there. Yeah, it was pretty crappy and old. And like I said, I'm going to have a new one. I already have a new header for it. And I'm just going to remake the header back section anyway. So not a big deal. That one's pretty old and rusty anyway. So I think we're ready to throw whatever I'm going to use to actually lift this thing up. Alright, remember how I said in the beginning how important it is to make sure you don't do this pretty much and collect all the fluids from the car. Well, I made a huge mess. So we pushed out the car, had to make room. I don't have enough room in the driveway because I have way too many cars. So if you want to buy a Miata, you should come buy my Miata. But yeah, we're going to have cat litter sit on this overnight, sweep it up in the morning, clean it up. I definitely should have done a better job of pulling the engine. I think I should have just separated the trans from the engine. Would have been a lot easier, a little bit more work, but a lot easier, and probably wouldn't have messed the car up because I did dent a few things on there. Definitely not the best way to do it. So when I put it back in, we're just going to have the trans go in first and then put the engine in. It'll be a lot easier to maintain the car being in a good condition because when this goes back in, the car should be in a lot better condition. Well, the garage was cleaned about 2 hours ago. I'm going to let this sit overnight and finish cleaning up. I probably need more cat litter if this isn't enough. And I'll probably just clean it all tomorrow. And I need to organize a lot of the stuff that I took off the car into all the little bins that I have for it. Alright, finally got the mess cleaned up. It has been quite a while because I cleaned up the mess and it got super cold out. But the car's outside still. Rained a couple times, probably not that good for it. But whatever, you probably clean up the engine bay a little bit. Got the engine on the stand, so I replaced the Subaru engine that I got over there on the stand. Yeah, it's a lot better in here. One thing I do want to talk about that I have sucked at so much in the past is organizing parts as you take them off. So I got these, and I learned this on older builds, especially with the Subaru when I took that thing apart. Was get little container boxes like this that you can separate bolts as you pull them apart and then label them. So like I've got flywheel, pressure plate bolts, all the intake bolts, and then these are like some of the hardware didn't really match, so the car has had some work done because we got like random hardware for the radiator. So a lot of this is going to get replaced with new stuff because it'll look nicer, it's not as corroded, everything like that. But it would be nice to not have to look through everything and try to find a bolt that fits a certain spot or something like that. Because in the past, I've been really, really bad with this. And same thing with the major parts as you pull them off, like the intake that I've got over here, just little things like that. As you take them off, put them in a box, label them, do something with them so you have some sort of organization, because it's going to make your life so much easier when you actually go put the car back together. Because I've done that in the past where I've done really bad about it. Like I've got all these boxes over here. And I've got so much miscellaneous hardware from other cars in there that I just didn't label or anything like that. So it makes putting something back together pretty much impossible. And I end up just replacing a lot of it, just trying to find the thread pattern, that it's actually the thread pitch, not the pattern. But I'll get off my soapbox on that. So hopefully you take that to heart. If you actually work on a car, it's worth it to do an extra 5 minutes as you're taking something apart, because it'll save you so much time and so much heartache and all that kind of stuff. So I'm gonna push the car back inside and we'll actually have a better look at it now that the engine's out. Well, I had to play Tetris with all 5 of my cars, well, I guess 6, including this one. Pushed it in, finally, so we can take a closer look at what kind of damages we got in here. Alright, inside here, looks like the typical rust. We'll have to actually remove a lot of this stuff to see how bad it is. In here, hard to tell, it looks really corroded. But like we were feeling earlier, this stuff feels pretty solid still. I don't know. We'll have to, I'm probably going to remove the spot welds on this battery tray, remove it, and figure out exactly how bad it is, how much metal I have to replace before I just start hacking everything up. Sometimes it'll creep down here into the frame rail, which it looks like it's ruined the paint at least, but once again, still feels pretty solid, so I might just definitely strip the paint, see how bad it is, see if it's like super pitted, or if it gets worse than that. Anything over here, driver's side still looks fine. Frame rails look pretty solid on the inside. Everything looks pretty good. Pretty much the same as on the outside that we saw earlier. And then core support looks super clean. Little stuff in like little areas where it kind of got folded up over time, but honestly, not that bad at all. Probably have to straighten out some of it because some of it's kind of bent up, but nothing crazy. It's not going to be a bunch of stuff to replace. Looks like this might have been some body work in the past, where somebody hammered this out. This might have been crumpled a little bit in the front end. I don't know. Kind of seeing signs of that having to be hammered out, and then some crappy body work put on there, because that's pretty wavy gravy compared to this side, which is pretty smooth. So that would make sense. And the core support's kind of all banged up, but nothing really bad. And a lot of that stuff is pretty simple to fix, and I'm not too worried about a lot of like little cosmetic stuff like that. I don't know if that's, yeah, I guess it is supposed to be there. It looks like a big dent, but I guess that's the body line. This side looks super clean. Doesn't usually rust on the driver's side, just usually the battery tray side. And yeah, not too bad. I'm definitely liking what I'm seeing compared to the last one that I had. Still has stuff like the stock paint code number on there. So even if this was in a small wreck or something, it wasn't repainted or anything like that, because this is still on there. It'd be nice to be able to retain this. I'm not really sure how to like peel up stuff like this. I'm sure someone on the internet knows how to do it, so I'll definitely research that, because that'd be kind of cool to save and put back in there, because we're sticking with the paint code, or at least we're sticking with white, not the exact paint, but it'll still be a white car. So I don't have much time to actually work on this today, so that's probably all I'm going to do. The video, I want to keep it short anyway, just stick with the engine. Next one, I'm probably going to finish stripping out the engine bay, remove all the components out of there, as much as I need to right now anyway, and then start seeing exactly what we need to do to fix that rust in the battery tray side. And trying to get that completely done, so stripping all the suspension, repainting it all, new bushings, new brakes, the coilovers installed, stuff like that, done, and then we'll move on to cosmetic things, paint the car, whatnot, but we got a long ways to go, obviously. I'm happy to actually finally start on this thing, because it's been a while that it's been sitting, and I really need to start doing more. It's been cold though. It just started getting cold, and I really don't feel like putting much effort into it, but we're going to start probably tomorrow when I have a little bit more time to put into it. But we'll end this video, and we'll pick this up next week when you'll see the engine bay getting stripped.